Welcome to EPG Pathshala. In this module number 5 in paper 4, titled 20th Century Major Writers and Their Works, let us discuss the background to what they have written. Let us discuss the prevailing conditions of the times and influencing factors that shaped their psyche, creative prowess, and ultimate outcome of their work. The 20th century witnessed a plethora of literary works which were radical as compared to those of the previous century. The chaos which erupted with the World War I marred human conscience, devastated human psyche across the world. Earlier concepts and influences were shaped by a generation shell-shocked by the aftermath of the war. The period is generally classified into modern and postmodern period. The era also saw the emergence of a new literary technique or techniques. Among the notable writers of the period, let's mention the names of W.B. Yeats, Wilfred Owen, T.S. Eliot, W.H. Auden, Joseph Conrad, James Joyce, D.H. Lawrence, Dorothy Richardson, Virginia Woolf. Among the dramatists, we may also remember the notable contribution of George Bernard Shaw, Sean O'Casey, Niall Coward, Samuel Beckett, Harold Pinter, Carol Churchill, Tom Stoppard, among others. The introduction to the technique of stream of consciousness by Dorothy Richardson in her novel Pilgrimage, a series of 13 books, encouraged Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, and the like to purport the same. But the works which marked the onset of modernism were The Waste Land by T.S. Eliot and Ulysses by James Joyce, both published in the year 1922. Among the poets, we can recall the names of Wilfred Owen, Siegfried Sassoon, Rupert Brooke, Robert Graves, among others. These poets were known as war poets. James Joyce, who was born in 1882 and departed in 1941, is one of the major figures among the writers of the age. Ulysses, which took its thread from the Greek story Odyssey, resulted in making Mary Bloom and Leopold Bloom household names in Ireland. Ulysses chronicles the experiences of Leopold Bloom in Dublin in the course of a single day on 16th June in the year 1904. Dubliners, published in the year 1914, is a collection of short stories caricaturing the people of Dublin. And a portrait of the artist as a young man, published in 1916, added to the renown of Joyce and 20th century literature. A portrait of the artist as a young man was originally titled Stephen Hero. The novel, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, is James Joyce's first novel, which can be termed a modern Bildungsroman novel. The name of Virginia Woolf is associated chiefly with the work A Room of One's Own, written in the year 1929. It's based on the series of lectures she delivered at Cambridge University in October 1928. She asserts the need for the necessary requirements for the conditioning of a woman writer. Her first novel, Voyage Out, published in 1915, followed the conventional pattern. Her later works, Mrs. Dalloway, published in 1925, To the Lighthouse in 1927, Orlando, a Biographer, published in 1928, marked her way to fame. She, along with her husband, founded the Hogarth Press and Bloomsbury Group. Mrs. Dalloway has the titular character as its protagonist. Woolf presents their novel through the interior monologue of an anonymous character, Clarissa Dalloway. The Waste Land, published in 1922, is the magnum opus of T.S. Eliot, who was born in the year 1888 and he departed in the year 1965. He donned many roles in the arena of literature. He was a poet, critic, dramatist, and editor. He added feathers of glory to his cap of authorship in myriad ways and lent grandeur to the literature produced by him and English literature as a whole. The barrenness induced into human life by the atrocities of the wars made Eliot portray the modern wasteland. However, the first volume of the poems was Prufrock and Other Observations, published in 1917. It's interesting that the name Prufrock was actually taken from that of a future furniture company who struck Eliot once seen next door. Other poetic collection of wide acclaim is Four Quartets, published in the year 1944. It contains 4 poems or 4 parts: Burnt Autumn, East Coca, The Dry Salvages, and Little Gidding. East Coca is the place where he has been laid to rest. Along with Christopher Fry, Eliot was one of the pioneers of poetic drama in England. After Shakespeare and Elizabethan writers, perhaps Eliot and Fry have revived the way of writing poetic drama in the 20th century. The Family Reunion, written by Eliot in the year 1939, Murder in the Cathedral, published in 1935, are some of the plays. In fact, The Murder in the Cathedral is a drama which describes the assassination of St. Thomas Becket during the reign of Henry II. Eliot gives the verse rendering to the historical event. It is a classic event today. The Sacred Wood, a series of lectures is given and published in the year 1920, is one of his major critical works, and concepts for which literature is indebted to him include tradition and individual talent, objective, correlative, etc. W.B. Yeats, along with Lady Kiragre, Sean O'Casey, James Synge, brought out a Celtic revival in Irish literature. In fact, Yeats is the first Irish writer to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature. His poem, The Second Coming, is one of the most anthologized works across the world. It states about the decline of the European civilization. It was in his work a vision that he detailed his observations and ideas about the occult. The Tower, The Winding Stair, and other poems are some of his collections which made him a famous poet. Chinua Achebe, the noted novelist from Africa, took the title for his novel Things Fall Apart, published in the year 1958, from the same text. Another important fact pertaining to Yeats is that it was he who introduced Rabindranath Tagore to the Western world. Yeats wrote the preface to Gitanjali, which was translated by Tagore himself, and we all know that Rabindranath Tagore was awarded the Nobel Prize for this work. The most vital aspect of Irish literary revival was the establishment of the Abbey Theatre. A solid position for Irish drama was established by the publication of the Dublin Trilogy by Sean O'Casey, which includes The Shadow of a Gunman, Juno and the Peacock, The Plough and the Stars, and the plays of Synge like The Playboy of the Western World, The Shadow of a Gunman, Riders to the Sea. Yeats' poems were those which sprouted roots in English literature. John Joseph Conrad, the British writer, won accolades as well as ruthless criticism with the publication of short story Heart of Darkness in the collection Typhoon and Other Stories published in the year 1903. In fact, he was Polish by birth, but is known as a writer, English writer today. His notable other works are Nostromo, A Tale of the Seaboard, published in 1904, The Secret Agent, A Simple Tale, published in 1907, and other texts of value and worth. D.H. Lawrence placed himself in limelight with the publication of his work, Lady Chatterley's Lover. It was banned soon after its release because of its direct and open treatment of sex. But later, the case was won by its publisher, Penguins, leading to the acceptance of the novel as a whole by all the people in the world. The Rainbow, published in 1915, was one of his first novels to be banned because of its obscenity. Women in Love is considered as the sequel of the same. Sons and Lovers, published in 1913, a well-acclaimed work, is an autobiographical novel in which Lawrence depicts his family and its mining background. E.M. Forster, who was born in 1979 and departed in 1970, is remembered chiefly for his contribution titled A Passage to India. Apart from this, he also wrote other novels like Howard's End, Where Angels Fear to Tread, The Longest Journey, A Room with a View. The protagonist of A Passage to India is Dr. Aziz. Forster deals with the theme of friendship between India and Western world, more so England. He delineates whether it is possible for these to come together. Here it is pertinent to mention that Kipling in his famous song said that the East is East, West is West, never shall the twain meet. But E.M. Forster tried to make it possible for the East and West to come together. But as one goes to nears the end of the novel, finds that time is not yet ripe, according to Forster, for the two parts of the world to come together. But Paul Scott in his Raj Quartet demonstrates and establishes that the East and West can come together. E.M. Forster, Edward Thompson, Paul Scott were all British writers who were sympathetic to India and the people in the British colonies. George Wells is no exception to this list. He is also one among those who wanted that the British people should give independence to the colonies. Aldous Huxley is popular for his novel Brave New World, published in the year 1932. He took the title from one of the dialogues of Miranda in Shakespeare's play The Tempest. His novel Chrome Yellow, published in 1921, is equally important and significant contribution of his. W.H. Auden wrote the famous elegy, The Memory of W.B. Yeats. This text established the worth of both the poets W.B. Yeats as well as W.H. Auden. Both are indeed immortal poets of eminence. 1984, published in 1949, and Animal Farm, published in 1945, are the most famous works of George Orwell. In fact, George Orwell's original name was Eric Hugh Blair. He was born in Bihar in India in the year 1903. He departed in 1950. Orwell was associated with novels like Animal Farm, a powerful political allegory. He was against Rudyard Kipling's notion of white man's burden and attacked it in the novel Burmese Days. published in the year 1934. 1984 was a revolutionary novel of its time. It also shows the foresight and thinking prowess of George Orwell. He looks ahead by 4 to 5 decades and comes to the conclusion that technology and authoritarian rule keep common man under surveillance all the time. That's exactly what happened in China and Russia and in all authoritarian regimes in the later part of 20th century. It brought out the idea of a future society in which the activity of every individual will be under surveillance, as mentioned earlier. The notion of a big brother watching over everyone's action was Orwell's insight into the technological advancement of the future times. His thinking and work are vindicated by events of the future, events which occurred in the future. In animal form, through animal characters, each representing particular historical figures, George Orwell attacks the rule of Stalin and his followers in the anti-Stalinist allegory. In his writings, Orwell was very much influenced by historical events occurred in Russia. He did serve the British Army during the war, and he worked in Burma too, to mention. Philip Larkin spearheaded a movement of poets in England in this century. The notable members of the group are Elizabeth Jennings, Thomas Gunn, and others. The poems Church-Going, The Whitsun Wedding, etc. by Larkin sounded unconventional and they were striking as compared to the poetry of the previous century. Ted Hughes and his animal poetry were in stark contrast to those of his contemporaries. Poems like Thought of Fox, The Jaguar, as well as his marriage with Sylvia Plath made him a reputed poet of the time. The Hawk in the Rain was his first collection of poetry. C.M.S. Heaney, the Irish poet, is also known for his modern-day translation of the anonymous and extant epic in English literature. Beowulf, Death of a Naturalist, is one of his most famous collections. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in the year 1995. Henrik Ibsen in Norway and Bernard Shaw in England brought glory to drama and elevated it beyond comprehension of contemporary audience. In fact, Ibsen was the one who introduced the problem plays. Ibsen never restricted his themes by the societal limitations. He dealt with taboo topics deliberately, purposely. In Ghost, he dealt with the incest and syphilis. He used his plays to prick the conscience of his society, the conscience of his audience, which hid its true colors under its facade of nobility and gentlemanly behavior. George Bernard Shaw developed, through his social plays, the concept of new woman. Pygmalion, published in 1913, was one of his first plays, and it gained more popularity through its film adaptation, My Fair Lady. The play presents the interesting turn of events surrounding Professor Higgins and Elizabeth Doolittle. Most of his plays belong to the 19th century, but their influence is far-reaching. He did not hesitate to criticize the practice of the British Church or English Church even. He wanted reformation in the spelling of English alphabet. He was a reformer in more than one way. H.G.Wells was one of the pioneers of science fiction. His most acclaimed novel is The Time Machine. The Invisible Man, written by H.G.Wells, inspired many a filmmaker in Hollywood and India also. The best picture we remember is Mr. X, where Ashok Kumar plays the lead and becomes invisible on consuming a potion prepared by a chemist in his laboratory. William Gerald Golding is best known for his work, The Lord of the Flies. The Interiors was published in 1955. His work, Pincher Martin, was published in 1956. Free Fall in 1959. And The Scorpion God was published in the year 1971. Doris May Lessing topped the charts with her work, The Golden Notebook, published in 1962. It is about 4 notebooks written by an aspiring woman writer. Children of Violence is the overall title of 4 novels whose protagonist is Martha Quest. Another pertinent or prominent event in the fiction of the time was the emergence of angry young man. This was depicted mainly through the works of writers like Kingsley Amis and John Osborne. Amis' popular novel was Lucky Jim, published in 1954. However, the concept was established by Osborne's novel Look Back in Anger, which was published in 1956. Samuel Beckett, John Gannett, Eugene Ionesco, Harold Painter are among the best dramatists known for creating absurd drama and making it popular in England as well as in other countries. Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett literally threw the unassuming audience into a state of confusion. Harold Pinter is known for his Comedy of Menace. Though his plays belong to the absurd genre, they are different in a special way. The Birthday Party, published in 1958, is one of his major plays. Other plays included The Dumb Waiter, The Caretaker, and others. The play strives for the freedom of artists in society. This is the chief achievement of Harold Painter as a dramatist. Edward Bond is another playwright of the same genre. The Pope's Wedding, Lear, The Bundle are some of his plays. Bond re-examined Shakespeare's plays and brought out a new version and modern version of his play. Arnold Whisker and Shelag Delaney were some of the important practitioners of the kitchen sink drama. The name was actually derived from a painting depicting a kitchen sink. It suggests that the lives of those belonging to the lower end of the social ladder are as equal as the others on the top. The drama aimed to depict the lives of the British working class who struggled to balance the routine in their life. This influenced a similar type of plays all over the world. It helped to bring to the forefront the life of the working class. Arnold's trilogy is a major contribution to the genre of chicken soup with barley roots. I am talking about Jerusalem or his other works. Delaney's major play is titled A Taste of Honey. It's pertinent to note that there were many writers who belonged to the post-war century. Arnold Bennett was acclaimed for his novels of the Five Towns. Anna of the Five Towns is one among them. The detective stories of Arthur Conan Doyle, especially The Hound of Baskervilles, is well received and popular even today across the world. Other works created by Kafka, Somerset Maugham, Ezra Pound, Lytton Strachey, Luigi Pirandello make the scene brilliant, lending luster to the literary scenario in the later part of 20th century. Before concluding, we may also try to sum up by saying the 20th century was torn into pieces by the wars, and it has motivated the writers to arrange the fragments into profound patterns. This led to the rise of the modernist genres, which found its strength literally from the dying embers of war. All the major writers and their associated movements in turn continue to influence the writings of the 21st century as well. 20th century, in fact, is battered by a succession of wars, notably the First World War, Second World War, and pitched battles fought across different parts, across the globe in different parts of the world throughout the century made it a bloody, despicable, and a little bleak and gloomy. Yet, the brilliance of the creative genius, the brilliance of the creative writers in England and in English made it a worthy and a beautiful period to live through, read through, and enjoy the literature produced during the period. Thank you very much for visiting EPG Pathshala. Namaskar.